And hello there,
Matthew,
Anthony,
my brother. What's happening?
my brother Anthony. How are you?
I'm good.
We are here tonight. Welcome everybody who's watching. We are here tonight to talk about Gorky Park. And now that we've covered that,
moving on.
Moving right on to some other topic, perhaps.
Moving right along.
So I'm assuming you felt the same way about this movie than I did.
This was a bit of a disappointment for me, show wise. We haven't covered anything on this show that didn't work for me like this one didn't work.
No, I mean we've covered some movies that were bad, but bad in a really fun and enjoyable way to watch.
That in their way worked for what they were, worked just fine and worked.
Yeah. This made quarantine seem fun. Like
wow.
Be quarantined longer if I didn't have to watch this movie.
I am okay. I'm a little surprised, and we'll obviously get into this, but I'm only a little bit surprised because I was expecting more of a fight on this, being that this was more your wheelhouse genre than it was for me. So if one of us was going to enjoy it just based on the fact that it was an espionage-esque kind of movie, I thought it'd be you. But we've clearly are some similar pages here. Now I gotta preface this. This is an odd moment here because both of us are, if there is a show business anymore, we're in kind of in the business a little bit. And we're in the position now of possibly having to say some critical things about a film directed by a great film director. I mean, he's got a great list of films that he did.
Who directs a lot of television and could currently hire us someday.
Possibly could. He does Masters of Sex.
That's not a show I'm ever going to be on.
You won't play the title character.
I can get you witnesses. I can get you signed statements.
You won't be the title character on the show. It won't. Don't worry. They'll find a part for you on that show. But they might not after.
I could be a crash test dummy on Masters of Sex.
But all kidding aside, here we are. And I find this an interesting situation. Not that I really thought I was ever going to get hired by Michael Apted to be on anything. I never really anticipated that. And I don't know if anyone's ever going to get hired to do anything ever again. So why not just say whatever the hell you think?
Well, and also, Michael, if you're watching or you ever do watch, just respect us for telling the truth. We think you've done some great work. And, I certainly have things that I don't want people to see.
Please. There's things that are currently you could see now that I would wish you had not.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work I don't want people to see.
I want it to be said, I've got some critical things to say about this movie, but Michael Apted is the guy who directed Gorky Park. Became famous for actually a documentary series that I think it just should be said is arguably one of the greatest documentaries ever made. And you know what that series is? Did you look that up?
No.
He did a series called 28 Up. And I think it started with earlier number sequence, like 12 up, 8 up.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, I do know.
But every 7 years, I think it was, he went back to the same group of kids in the same class in first grade. And he would go to them every 7 years and interview all these kids and watch them grow up in this documentary, essentially, that he may still be shooting. Anyway, it's great. And it's one of the best documentaries ever made. And that's him. He made Coal Miner's Daughter. Great movie, I think. He made Thunderheart, which is I liked a lot. He's made some good stuff. This is a different kind of movie.
Yeah.
Shall we now? Do we have a preview trailer? Something to see?
Yes, we do. We have a preview for people to watch.
This is Gorky Park, 1983's Gorky Park, directed by Michael Apted.
And here's the trailer.
In Russia, a land of mystery. In Moscow, a city of secrecy. There was one place of peace and safety. A place where an American has been murdered. A place called Gorky Park.
Look, no face. Sliced right off.
Bodies carved up in the middle of Moscow. Who knows where it could lead?
The answers lie somewhere between what is said.
It is more than possible that KGB killed those 3 people.
And what is done.
I didn't kill him. It doesn't make any difference who pulled the trigger, but you're the one that's gonna pay for it.
Between what is known.
I have established that you knew all 3 of them.
But what are we talking about?
Dead bodies in Gorky Park.
And what is hidden.
Either you are with them, in which case it doesn't matter where I run.
You'll be trapped here. They saw me last night.
Between those who enforce the law.
I'm saving a life. Whose? Mine.
And those who are above it.
Corruption is part of us. The very heart of us.
Between the lies that are told.
Irina, I love you.
I've learned to trust nothing.
And the truth that lies buried in Gorky Park.
My friend is dead. Your friends are dead. Why delude yourself? Why?
Now, from the spellbinding international bestseller, comes an electrifying motion picture.
They've been dealing the whole time. So now they'll deal with me.
He doesn't know who to trust.
Please, you don't want this case.
Where to turn.
I have to have a witness. Someone must tell me.
Or what might happen if he gets too close to the truth.
You should be looked after. Certainly you should be looked after.
Orion Pictures presents William Hurt, Lee Marvin, Joanna Pakula, Brian Dennehy, Gorky Park.
Now, okay, it's not the best trailer I've ever seen, but even seeing that trailer, there's part of me that'd be like, oh, I would see that movie. I'd go see that. Because it looks like it has the things in it that you might want out of it. It's not that it doesn't look like it's going to be maybe a redefining moment for the genre, but okay, give it a spin.
Maybe.
All right, this is the if that didn't make it clear, this is the log line from IMDb. Let's see if this is accurate. A Moscow police officer investigates a vicious triple homicide and stumbles upon a high-level international political conspiracy. That's a fair assessment. Doesn't give anything away. We're going to spoil the hell out of it and give everything away. That which I understand. Actually, it's the opposite problem. I've usually behind the espionage thriller, I'll sit there completely mystified. I'll enjoy it, but I won't know what's happening.
Right. But you were ahead of this.
I was right. I was ahead of it most of the time.
Yeah.
In a way that made me really assume that I couldn't know what was happening because it wouldn't be that obvious. But
because it was so obvious. Yeah.
It was remarkable that way.
Yeah. And the fact that what everything comes down to is breaking the monopoly on sable. Not the fish.
Not the fish. Not the good sable.
Not with the bacon, but the sable that makes the coat.
That sable. That's okay. There's certain things. Let's give the stats here. So this is based on a novel that was a best-selling novel,
right?
By by Martin Cruz Smith. Have you read any of his stuff?
I have. I read this novel, and I have a theory about the popularity of the novel and the film and why there was any kind of interest and buzz around this, in spite of the fact that the story is ultimately pretty thin.
Right. And I would imagine it has to do with the time behind the Iron Curtain, a kind of mystery of how things would work there,
and that there weren't a lot of novels that were looking at it from the Soviet side as if the Soviets were just plain old bad guys.
Yeah.
And here was a novel about a Soviet, essentially a flatfoot,
right.
Plotting flatfoot trying to solve a
regular guy.
And because this was before the Iron Curtain came down, and it was on sort of the eve of Glasnost and all of those things starting, that I think that in the same way that when The Russians Are Coming came out, when Dad's movie The Russians Are Coming came out, and it was like, oh my God, here's this movie that says the Russians are people.
Right.
Just like we are.
At the time was a crazy thing to say in the States. That wasn't safe necessarily to even suggest.
Yeah. And it was a crazy thing to say over there, because when The Russians Are Coming came out, the Kremlin's official response to The Russians Are Coming was something along the lines of détente or diplomacy. This was actually pre-détente. Diplomacy, I guess. Diplomacy is not a laughing matter, was their response to...
That was like their official response to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember hearing that. Yeah, so it makes total sense that this would be, it would be like a police procedural about North Korea.
Right. Yeah.
About a murder that took place in North Korea and how the cops would deal with that there. And that would be interesting to any audience right now. I think they'd be fascinated in the same way people were interested in then. It is a great idea. And I'd still want to go see the movie that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm still ready to buy a ticket for this movie. And I remember being a kid and this came out in '83. So I was not a kid, but I was a junior in high school. I think maybe I was a sophomore, depending on when this came out. But I remember it feeling important and feeling like it was an expose and that we were going to get real, something gritty and real and very different. And I remember as a young person thinking that had happened because I didn't really understand it when I was that young. and that was, it's an interesting, that's a whole other discussion of how movies change over your lifetime, on different viewings. But we're not talking about that right now.
Do we want to go into do we want to start with the negative and move to the positive?
I think we should start with the positive, like we usually do on the show, and work our way very quickly into the negative and stay there.
I actually have a few positive things to say.
I do too.
A couple of images that I thought were interesting. In the very opening of the film, tying into what we're talking about politically, things may be changing politically and the world changing. The juxtaposition of the three happy young skaters and the old woman in the house where she's controlling,
plays the records for everybody to skate to. Right.
And this juxtaposition of these happy young people skating and this old woman who was clearly around for the Battle of Leningrad, and the memories and her the way she represented old Russia, and these young folks represent hope and new Russia. I thought that was a very interesting juxtaposition. Another a very nice detail. The KGB officer getting into driving around in a car that had a traffic ticket on the windshield, I thought was an interesting detail, because he obviously doesn't give a crap about a traffic ticket. I mean, a parking ticket. And just the fact of, like, I ignore parking tickets on my windshield. And later, I guess we'll wrap up with our best shot, best line, all of that stuff. I want to get to that later. I want to have something to say at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I don't have anything much to say other than little things that I liked here and there.
Okay.
That's actually not really true. Paul Silbert is the star of this movie, and Ralph Bode, who shot the movie, so it's the production designer and the DP, to me, are what this movie's all about. Maple Dragon. Oh, Peter says Dennis Potter to certain Brits was what Mamet or Sorkin is to Yanks. Yeah, not as far. Yeah, we're going to definitely get into Dennis Potter. Dennis Potter is he's a great writer ordinarily. I don't know what happened here. Dennis Potter is responsible for the Singing Detective, and I think also for Pennies from Heaven. Singing Detective is some of the best TV I think ever made. Great writer, and it was a coup to get him to do this screenplay. But something really weird happened, and I think, you know, when I'm saying the DP and the production designer are the stars, I really mean it. I think this movie, the strength of it is the atmosphere. And the even though the locations, they didn't shoot this in Russia, it really feels like they did. It has the quality of something authentic, and particularly because they don't show you the Kremlin, and they don't show you. It would be like a real New York movie doesn't show you the Empire State Building.
Right. You never see, what is it, St. Basil's, that church with the...
I don't know what you're doing there with your hand, but that's not legal on YouTube.
the church.
Stop now while you're ahead.
The church with all the round spires.
That's not St. Petersburg's church?
I think that's St. Basil's.
St. Basil's? Okay.
So.
Not big on geography and architecture, history, and English and Russian or any of that. But you know what I mean? It was banal, and it was authentically banal. Like it had this real feeling like you were in this kind of gray city, and it didn't look particularly interesting. And I feel like that's what it would be like to kind of be there.
Yeah.
And live there. I thought the apartments all felt real. That was all interesting. You really felt like you were looking behind the Iron Curtain, I thought, as far as the cars, the clothes, the way the buildings looked, the design of the art direction in general.
Yeah. And
I thought the shooting was really great. Simple for the most part, but it really kind of evoked some really good spy movies from the past, and was appropriately kind of cold and bleak and not romanticized, and all that I thought was fantastic. So it looks like a movie that you're going to be really into. And then people start talking, man.
Catch me the grub worms.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's goes to best lines, but we can repeat that again and again as far as I'm concerned, because it is the best line of 1983. I don't even know what to say. I think there was a tactical, a giant error here that had for me to do with not casting Russian, or, you know, at least people from Eastern Europe to be in this movie.
Well, okay.
There is exclusively British people playing the Russians and the Soviets, and except for William Hurt, the accents are all over town, all over the place. And any reality that production designer set up, any truth to that setting and that camera work is destroyed the minute anybody opens their mouth, because you're like, this is a masterpiece theater choice. I don't understand why this is like a documentary we're looking at, but it's just British actors, and then William Hurt What's happening? Why is he talking?
You didn't like his English accent?
But it's not an English accent. It's a strange hybrid, isn't it?
Well, it's like this sort of standard,
Okay. Continental accent.
Yeah.
With a bit of a Slavic, maybe, just a dash of something.
Yeah.
Transylvanian. I don't know.
It was, just
I felt bad for him. I felt bad because he's an actor I really like. And I honestly think another thing I love about this movie, and I'll be behind this, I think if he had been allowed to speak probably the way that he wanted to, like either accent or not, like Russian accent or just do the part, like don't worry about the accent, he would have been amazing. But
I wish they'd all just been talking like freaking human beings. It was so stylized.
Yeah, and the language in it is utterly melodramatic and utterly grubworms. So it's strange. I mean, you got William Hurt, who looks more nervous than he was in his first movie, which I just learned was Altered States.
Right, in which he was fantastic.
Fantastic in it, and seems much more like a mature actor than he is in this movie. He seems like he's nervous in this one, and I think the accent must have thrown him because he's not comfortable.
The only way I could figure the accent and everybody having a British accent was to make it, okay, if you're speaking in a British accent, you're speaking Russian. And if you're Lee Marvin, you're speaking English.
Well, it reminded me of another connection that we have to this movie. Joanna Pacula.
I have no connection to this movie of any kind. Ever.
Joanna Pacula, you do have a connection.
I know. I hate it. But
we both met her because she worked with Dad on a movie called Escape from Sobibor.
Yes,
which was a really interesting TV movie that they did about a real story about a mass escape from a concentration camp.
Right, which was only about 3 years after this.
Yeah, 87.
Yeah.
So Joanna Pakula was in that movie, and we got to meet her on that. So wait, where were we going with this? Why do we
trying desperately to find something?
Oh, that you do have a connection to the movie.
Yeah. And the other connection is we were both in Europe a couple of times. We went to Europe a couple of times.
I mean, we were actually like in East Berlin. I mean,
we've been in snow. We've both been in snow.
We've been very cold at different times. We weren't warmly enough.
And we've both done bad English accents.
So okay, the other thing that's great about this movie, okay, I think is the idea of a police procedural there. Great idea. It's not the movie's fault though, because that's the book.
Right.
But what I thought was really promising was actually the bodies. The bodies in the snow were really, really disturbing and really well done. Yeah. That was 83. We're talking about, Silence of the Lambs was 91. We're way, way away from that level of forensic kind of like detail.
Right.
And 83, that was pretty shocking and pretty well done. The scenes in the morgue, whoever did the makeup effects and the body effects in this was on top of it. They were really good. And that's where it ends, because the procedural part just goes away and it becomes kind of like a TV show for a lot of it.
Yeah. And then Joanna Pakula, although I enjoyed her work in it, we're going back to the accent, she's the only one with any kind of real accent. And that's just her accent.
That's just her, that's how she talks.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like these fundamental moves that they started out with, like how the people would talk, or maybe casting British people in the first place. I just feel like they really, Ian Bannen, who I love and is a wonderful actor. Ian Bannen, who we know from, I have it written down. I even wrote some notes down here. Braveheart, Hope and Glory, Flight of the Phoenix, the original one with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Ian Bannon is great. He's a very Scottish gentleman, and they cast him for his face, which I think they thought looked like Brezhnev or something. Like they were trying to make some connection, but there was no Russian quality. I mean, Hurt, I felt, did a great job with the physicality of this part.
Yes,
that's what I was saying, was that there was something really extreme about it. I mean, he had eyeliner on. It kind of worked though. He was exhausted. I loved how pale he was, and his hair was he just embodied this in a great way. And then he had to talk, and he had to say some things in this movie that, well,
he had to say some things. I love you, Irina, he had to say, for no apparent reason.
That was the most unmotivated love story I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah. Another line that made me want to shoot somebody was, which is the brandy, which is the creme de menthe. Like that had some deep meaning, you know. I'm saying this to you about the drink, but the subtext is I'm saying it to you about what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but even you, the writer, didn't know what you meant by that line. You just thought it would be deep and go somewhere.
Nothing beats the Emperor of the known universe, Ian McDiarmid, saying, "Fetch me the grubworms," though. It is
Emperor Palpatine,
the best thing in the movie.
Can we hear it a couple more times?
Please. I was going to rip it, but then I realized, you probably had done it.
I ripped it.
Fetch me the grubworms.
Okay, now this is interesting because I think one of the coolest things about this movie is in theory, narratively, is him taking the heads, because what they've discovered 3 bodies in Gorky Park. The police discover, here's the plot. We should have said this earlier, but anyway, 3 bodies discovered buried under the snow in Gorky Park, which is a big park in Moscow. Maple Dragon, you've both drunk vodka? Yes, not tonight.
He's talking about what things that we have in common with the movie.
Oh, okay, that's true. And this movie was dismal. This movie was dismal. You're talking about the actress.
Pasha. Which one was Pasha?
Pasha is his
sidekick, the guy who gets killed in the worst shooting death scene I've ever seen in a movie.
We're so on the same page. It's incredible. Yeah, this was Michael Elfic, who's fantastic. Another actor I love. I mean, there were some great actors in this movie. Michael Elfic, who's in A Lucky Man and Quadrophenia. He's in The Elephant Man. He's in With Nil and I. And one of my favorites, Vampire Motorcycle. He gets to play the sidekick, Pasha, I think, and you're right, is in the worst shooting in a movie. And that's Alexei Sales, who I also love from The Young Ones on television. His first movie, I think, worst shooting in the head ever in a movie.
And when it happened, like before he opens the door, you think, oh, he's going to get shot now.
Can you bring up the picture? Because the still I sent you typifies this movie to me.
Yeah, I can bring this up.
This is the gun that kills Alexei Sales in the movie.
Here, hold on. Here we go.
I just want to note how it's bent. It's completely bent at an angle. And I'm like, that's not going to work. That's this movie. It's trying hard.
Like an old piece of a handlebar that they stuck on the, like a bicycle grip on the front of a,
it's a jump rope handle.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yep. Everything about that shot looks great. It's well lit. The costume's good. The glove, and then there's this thing in the middle of it that you're like, really? This isn't really gonna hold for 2 hours, and it doesn't. every single thing that we discover about what happens at the end, he discovers in the first half hour of the movie.
Yeah.
It is a wonky silencer, which was my Star Wars name.
Somebody else is pointing something out too. He had a silencer, and yet we were hearing gunshots. As far as
I figured it was a Soviet make silent. It was probably pretty
not very good, right?
Well machined. I gave it a pass. Fetch me the grub worm.
Yeah, stop playing.
How that didn't make it into the last Star Wars film, I don't understand.
It's just one of my favorite lines ever.
So that's an interesting part of the story, though, because it's connected to what I like about it. The forensics part of it,
right?
83. Remember, this was 83. That was actually interesting. So they find these 3 bodies in the snow. Their faces have been surgically removed, and their fingertips, so they can't identify these people. They don't know if they're high-powered Soviet officials or if they're American students. They have no idea. So they take them to the morgue, and they're autopsied, and William Hurt collects their heads because he's got to find a way to figure out who they are. This is leading to a very funny thing to me. You have a question? This isn't a Zoom chat.
Okay.
It's your show.
I have a problem even with that, though. Even though it was 83 and we didn't have NCIS and CSI and all that crap, even then, they removed the fingertips, they slice off their faces, and why did they shoot one of them in the mouth? So that you wouldn't be able to identify him by dental records. One gunshot to the mouth ain't going to do it. Anybody who reads any of these things knows you got to pull the teeth.
I don't. It doesn't destroy any. Yes, that's a detail that totally blows it. But just in terms of reconstructing the faces,
yes.
So he takes it. He takes the heads to Emperor Palpatine, who's like works at the museum, and he makes faces out of severed heads. That's one of the things he does. And I guess in Russia, there's a lot of call for that.
It's not. No, he did it in terms of like working Arkin.
I know. I'm making some jokes. I'm trying to keep this show alive, man. This movie's killing us. So he tries to make faces out of these skeleton faces and stuff, and that was kind of interesting, except for the fact that right before he says, "Fetch me the grub worms," which is how they take the flesh off these severed heads.
Yeah,
he's working like very centrally on this head that he's working on, and he's talking to William Hurt, and they're cross-cutting to William Hurt, and he's working with the clay and putting the clay on this head. And they cut back to Ian McDiarmid, and he literally turns the head to camera so the camera can see it, not to William Hurt.
Right.
He's not looking at it, but he just turns it like a quarter turn so it's good for camera. Which I realized the movie was over for me right then. I'm like, this can't go on. And then he said, "Fetch me the grub worms."
Fetch me the grub worms.
And he said it like that.
But then the other thing is like, okay, I get it. The grub worms, the whole point of the grub worms is clean the skull, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is some other book, and I'm not remembering which one it was, in which this is a plot point. And when you clean the skull, you freaking clean the skull. There's nothing left but bone, right? If you're going to do what this doctor is doing.
Well, that's how I do it. I don't know how.
But then they have this other scene where he's very carefully removing the grub worms because they're so precious and he loves them, and putting them back in their jar. And there's still all kinds of crap hanging off of the skull. The grub worms have not cleaned the skull.
You're right.
Stuff hanging off. It just, none of it worked.
It's really rough.
Can we talk about something just incredibly spectacular?
I'd love to.
The sandals that they wore at the...
You mean the clogs? the white disco clogs that they had to wear at the spa.
Or mules or whatever they were that they're wearing at the Russian baths. I could not believe you know that they showed up at set that day and
they were like, no, really?
At the wardrobe supervisor and said, I'm not wearing these. No, these are authentic Russian bath.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of pleasure for me in that movie for sure. Lee Marvin's clothes were great. I loved how he dressed in this film. And Lee Marvin tries.
The scenes in the Russian baths looked like outtakes from La Cage aux Folles. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was watching.
Well, there's no accounting for Soviet tastes at the time.
But Lee Marvin tries, and also, I mean, all Lee Marvin has to do is open his mouth. I mean, that voice.
Well, he was criticized for being really, really poorly cast in the movie, and I kind of have to disagree. I thought he was cast against type, but I liked how it was against type. Bet Bowles, those clogs, they stop the movie. You just immediately, or you have to pause it, get a drink, like wrap your head around it.
Yeah,
the clogs are fantastic. But I thought he, because of what the character has to do at the end, he kind of has to do some action stuff at the end of the movie, and it's a bit of a surprise, that he's the sophisticated American millionaire businessman. And they cast Lee Marvin, much more of like a James Mason part.
Yeah, and we also have to believe by the end of the movie that he's the guy that he knows how to slaughter sables and make a coat, that he worked his way up through that and was capable of slicing their faces off.
Yeah, but James Mason could clearly slice a face. Come on. Have you seen any of his work? Okay, while you're bringing up little things like, forensic details that if you read these books, you'd know were true or not. Let's talk about something else, Matthew. Let's talk about the giant, gaping, train-sized hole that is in the middle of this film. The murders took place in the daytime.
In broad daylight, yes.
Broad daytime, daytime at a park where people running around. There's a Ferris wheel that goes high up. They could have seen everything, whatever.
Right.
Okay, so the murder takes place like off the beaten path, like over a little hill in a little wooded area.
Yeah.
But still in broad daylight.
Slice their faces off.
3 faces, fingertips, buried in snow. How did whether or not he had the ability to disable a sable? Thank you. That just happened.
Wow. Did that just happen?
Yeah. Whether or not he had that ability, he couldn't have done any of that fast. Fetch me the grub worms is the new bigger boat for a situation that's untenable. Yes.
Yes.
Peter, that is true.
Fetch me the grub worms.
Fetch me the grub worms. So the whole, that's basically, and I didn't even realize how dumb that was until about halfway through the movie. I just kind of accepted it because it was so matter of fact that you think you must be missing something.
Well, they do a little look over here with it, because what they snow you with, get it? Snow you bodies.
That's good too. But
they snowed you with the idea of that. How did he get away with it in broad day? How did he shoot 3 people? The noise.
Noise? The 1912 overture.
Yeah, I mean, forget a silencer.
Or whatever
it couldn't be that he used a silencer, because we all know Soviet silencers are like bullhorns.
They're loudinators. Actually.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's true. So it was because of the 1812 overture when the cannons start firing, that's when he shot them.
Well, that takes care of the gunshots.
Yeah, that takes care of the gunshots, and that solves the problem. So that sort of a look over here for the audience, so that we don't think about the fact that he then has to slice the faces and fingertips off.
What I think you're led to believe starts kind of like as an act of crazy passion on his part, right? Does he know he's going to do it in the
Oh,
park?
yeah, no, he plans it because he brings the gun and everything. He has to get rid of them.
Well, it makes no sense that he'd do it, that he wouldn't send a henchman to do it, that there isn't a real henchman in this movie is insane. That we're left with Ian Bannen, who's about 90 when they shot this, and an 87-year-old Lee Marvin. Should we have brought Grey Goose, not Smirnoff, Silence, or Silly Assassin Man? Yeah. Although Smirnoff apparently is the preferred vodka in Moscow. From what I'm told. My friend Jack has told me that he says it's Smirnoff.
A couple of other things, though, that were kind of a nice touch when you're talking about mood in this film was none of them pay off, but there's lots of shots of people watching other people. Like in the grubworm lab, there's all those shots of that woman looking suspiciously at it.
Yeah, but frankly, you know what? I thought that was overblown. I thought that was to me, it was art. It was melodramatic.
I'm trying to find something nice.
Stop being a good person. It doesn't look good on you at all.
Okay, what? It doesn't. No. It doesn't. What about the only scene that I thought approached being emotionally effective for me was the scene where Dennehy has to watch that guy destroy the head, the model head of his brother.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I got what they were going for, and I thought, okay, that would be a tough thing to watch.
I agree. However, they made too much of it because William Hurt going, "Don't look at this," was a little too much.
Okay, I have a question for you.
What does the Soviet cop care if this dude sees that? Like, he doesn't care.
End of the movie. That happens, right? They kill the guy who crushes the head of the. Right? They see the betraying cop guy hand the money off, and they realize he's in on it. They go and they kill. They shoot the guy without a silencer. The other people don't hear that. They were just there. They walked 40 yards away.
Matthew, at the end of the movie, William Hurt leaves Dennehy's precious police badge in a bowl of peanuts at the bar in hopes that he'll eat peanuts that night.
Well, he says to him, "Eat my peanuts." He tells him to eat his peanuts.
That's stupid. That is ridiculous. Because then if anybody did that to me, I'd be like, no, I don't eat grubby bar peanuts. That's disgusting. I'm not that hungry. Thank you. I'm allergic to peanuts. If he was allergic to peanuts, he'd never have gotten that badge.
Okay, I'm going to reach for something else then that you can. What about at the end of the movie, the very end of the movie, the symbolism of the wild sables running for freedom?
I don't even
say running for freedom.
I don't even want to talk about
like Joanna Pacula.
Yeah, who looks a little bit
little ferret sable eyes.
Yeah. They made her look like that in the film. Apparently, they accentuated her already kind of,
Carol, really? So that was a conscious thing on their part to make her.
They made her eyebrows bigger, apparently, and did all kinds of stuff with her hair, which was not like that.
To play up the similarity between her and a rodent and an expensive rodent.
My guess is her agent explained it differently to her in pitching it, but essentially that's all true.
Okay.
There's things in it that make no sense. Like when William Hurt's trying to piece the case together, he keeps on having not flashbacks because he wasn't there, but visions of the event in his mind, more fleshed out a little bit every time he sees it.
Fleshed out.
Which is actually an interesting correlation between fleshing the heads out and figuring out who these people are by building their features with clay over the skeleton. So I get that analogy, but
and I'm reaching.
No, I mean seriously, there was all this because they're literally imitating the conversation with all these shots. It's like the repeated scenes from the conversation of Gene Hackman, like listening to those tapes they made but the thing is that he wasn't there. This isn't anything to do with his memory or anything William Hurt actually heard or saw. He's just imagining now the back of Lee Marvin's head when he hadn't been before.
Right.
And I found that just again, like, who was that? That was probably Dennis Potter. I can't blame Michael Apted on that. That's a script problem.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of this was script problems,
which I hate to say because Dennis Potter is amazing. I was really surprised. The score. Was it James? Who did the score? James Horner. Done incredible. He's one of the big titans of film composing.
Not in this.
He went crazy, and honestly, like, I never noticed that some of the worst music editing I've heard in a movie. Yeah. It sounded like they were putting songs with the wrong time, with different time signatures over each other to like enhance excitement.
Yeah, and it didn't work.
They tried to drive that score so hard, and there was nothing happening. There'd be people walking down a street for 10 minutes.
A Russian car going 17 miles an hour with car chase music going on.
Amelia brought up something great that we haven't mentioned so far. So the whole reason Joanna Pakula is in this movie is because it's her friends that we think it's her friends that were killed in the park.
Right.
And she might be trapped and in danger also.
Right.
And it seems like her friends were trying to get safe passage to America, maybe, that they were trying to broker some deal. And William Hurt is trying to figure out who they were and who killed them and who was behind the brokering of the deal and all this stuff. And she knew these three people who were killed. She knew them all pretty well. We see her in the beginning of the movie with them. So William Hurt collects their heads that have all been shaved of their faces. And then Emperor Palpatine fetches the grub worms and makes new faces.
Yes, for her best friend.
William Hurt takes the heads of her best friends, the fake heads, home with him.
Yeah.
And for some reason puts one of them in his refrigerator.
Right. When it doesn't need to be in a refrigerator.
Probably not, but that's not my point. That was Amelia's point. Hear me out. He has it in there for a while. Brian Dennehy comes over. They have a long chat. He opens the fridge, sees the head. He goes, "Why do you have a head in the refrigerator?" "Oh, those are the heads that are the people. Looks just like the people that were killed." "You mean Joanna Pakula's friends?" "Yeah, those friends." A couple minutes later, Joanna Pakula comes over to the apartment.
Yeah.
And she's like, "My friends are alive." "No, they're in America. They made it. I think they're not dead." And William Hurt's like, "No, I think your friends are dead."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Prove it."
And he doesn't show her the head.
Doesn't show her the head in his refrigerator of her friend.
Yeah.
For 40 minutes.
He doesn't show it until
days go by.
Yeah.
He's trying to convince her, "It's your friends who are dead, and you've got to help me solve the case to do it for your friends, at least your friends." And she's like, "They're alive. They're in America."
Yeah.
And like, no. He shows her the head at the very end of the movie, finally. What happens?
She freaks out.
Because it's her friend.
Because it's her friend.
Which we knew for 40 minutes.
Yeah. That is one of the worst scenes I've ever seen. The writing in that scene.
The whole concept. He's the worst cop in the world, wherever he's from. He's gone days.
Yeah.
This head in the does he not show it to her because he doesn't want to hurt her feelings? I'm confused.
It'll upset her.
But he's from Moscow.
But he's falling in love with her.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
how about this bit of dialogue? KGB have better cars, you know. Oh, but they don't always take you where you want to go, do they?
Speaking in riddles.
Yeah.
The Iron Curtain riddle speak.
Yeah.
Can't really say what's on your mind.
Remember with Bronco when we'd look at a restaurant as he was driving us around Belgrade, and we'd say, "What about that restaurant? That looks good." And he'd say, "Oh, for me it's good. For you, not so well."
Not so much. Yeah. I remember it well. We can go over a long list of things that were just kind of like, what? The chase scene with Brian Dennehy is I'm sorry. I'm really reaching to find stuff that works, and I'm coming up with so little. I was surprised.
We've got new comments that I didn't look at here.
Oh, we missed something. You haven't rewrites them done by someone. Oh yeah, well, of course, Peter, being a fan of Dennis Potter's, you'd say that he didn't write the script, that he fought to keep credit over. I think having sole credit, if he didn't like it, he certainly could have said, no, have somebody else on it. No.
He could have pulled a Ben Hecht and had his name taken off of it.
I thought the same thing, Peter. I thought there had to be interference from the studio. There had to be rewrites and reshoots that just went off the rails. Not to mention the fact that not everybody's cut out to write this kind of material.
No.
And I just don't think it was a good match. I really don't. Could you? Okay, now I have a couple of bests.
Okay.
I showed you the best prop. It's the bent gun. I just think it's the greatest.
You want me to play? There's a clip you want me to play.
Well, there's a clip. This is my favorite. This is my favorite piece of dialogue in the film. I had to stop the movie when this happened.
You don't want this case. Please. You don't want this case.
How were they killed, Comrade Chief Pathologist?
The two men were shot in the head at contact range. All three were shot in the chest. They were all in their 20s.
Go on.
Arkady, whoever cut off their faces knew what he was doing. He was an expert.
Whoever cut off their faces knew what he was doing. He was an expert at cutting off faces, Matthew. An expert. There is no expert at that. That's not something that anybody is an expert at. A freaking plastic surgeon's not even really an expert at removing faces.
I'm an expert face cutter.
And this doctor is looking seriously at another man, saying that this man is an expert. At removing faces. I had to stop the film and go take a walk around the block at that point.
Favorite shot?
I do like the way it's shot. There wasn't really a lot of, there were some things I didn't like the way that they were shot. More than I can say I had favorite shots. I mean, I really liked the long lenses on the one of the scenes I did remember was the first meeting with Joanna Pacula and William Hurt after he meets her at the movie studio to question her about the ice skates.
Right.
And I came out of that being bothered because once again there's a scene in a movie about shooting a movie which is like no movie that ever got shot.
Yeah.
They always have a scene where they're shooting a movie and the director's there and the director's
you mean the camera move on that shot of the
camera move on that shot isn't possible.
No.
And the director character who's back there like mouthing off and telling people like there's no directors talk like that. Like none of that was legitimately like a movie.
Right. And as if the Soviets knew nothing about making movies. Like they didn't have Sergei Eisenstein, Yeah. Yeah. The cool
I did like though the way that was shot. I love more than any one particular shot, I loved how they evoked the cold. Everything really looked legitimate. They probably were all cold the whole time, but there was a frosty quality to it and a gray quality to all the shooting that I just liked. But nothing really stood out that much.
I like the end credits, which were just, I think, over a black screen. I liked that shot.
You like that?
I was very happy then.
It's funny that DP Ralph Bode went on to shoot. I think he'd already shot Saturday Night Fever. Went on to shoot Dress to Kill for Brian De Palma, which is gorgeous. I mean, absolutely stunning, really stylized, and so he could do a lot of different kinds of styles. But I don't know. Did you have a favorite shot? Like
the end credits when the movie. Okay. I really struggled through this movie.
It was hard. It made me want to quit doing the show. I'm going to be totally honest. No, that's not. This hurts. This was we crossed a threshold here. I take no pleasure in not liking a movie. I really do try to find things to like about stuff. But I just didn't really feel like people's heart was in this.
No. But we have a movie next week that we know is good.
I've seen it more recently than I hadn't seen this since '83, so my memory on it was pretty foggy. But I've seen this current one more recently, and I have not a completely unbiased, opinion about it.
Well, I had a completely unbiased opinion about it the first time I saw it. And I loved it when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie. It's really great.
Next week's movie, for everybody out there, is going to be The Paper. And we're going to have a special guest. And if anybody's watching who knows us, don't give away in the comments who the special guest is. But we do have
we do. We'll have a special guest, and they're going to be a lot of fun to talk about this.
And the movie is good. So it's The Paper with Michael Keaton and Glenn Close and Robert Duvall.
Yes, and others.
And 8,000 New York actors.
Yeah. One of those movies.
And so that'll be fun. That'll be a good one to watch.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And in the meantime, I don't think we have anything else to say about this movie.
Just to, Michael Apted, I've loved your other films. I apologize. I'm sorry to publicly state these opinions. I know I'll never get cast in anything you do. I wasn't anyway, though. Let's face it.
Yeah. No,
we're at a crossroads here. I'm not. It's not. What do I have to gain by keeping my mouth shut?
I have heard that Michael Apted is not a guy who holds a grudge.
Well.
That's not true. I haven't heard that.
You've heard nothing about him. You don't know anything about him. You didn't even know that he made Continental Divide, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, there. Okay. All right. So we apologize. We will try to do better in the future. Please like our show anyway. Please subscribe. And when you do, make sure that you click the bell icon so that you get notifications of our upcoming live streams. And next Monday on Tips and Techniques for Actors, Authors, and Storytellers, I am going to be interviewing Scott Williams, who is a writer on NCIS, and we'll have lots of interesting information and good stories to tell and tips for all you writers out there. Do you have a signature sign-off, Tony?
No.
I do. I have a signature sign-off.
Do you?
I do.
I have to work on that. I haven't got anything clever at all.
My signature sign-off is...
Fetch me the grub worms.
That should just be it.
I'm tired of that.
Yeah.
Catch me the grubworms.
I want one of those little things that you can carry in your pocket and just button, and it says "Fetch me the grubworm."
Yeah, you can get one. It's called a tape recorder. Let's get a tape recorder.
Get a tape recorder.
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you for joining us, Tony. I'm sure I'll see you before next week.
No doubt.
I will see you next week.
Yes, sir.
Good night, everybody. And fetch us some grubworms.
Get me the grubworms.